I was up in Mama's attic, knee-deep in dust and memories, when my hand touched something cold and plastic in the bottom of an old shoebox. A cassette tape. The case was cracked, yellowed with age, and across the label, in my daddy's shaky handwriting, were 5 words that stopped my heart. Play, only if I die. Pull yourself close to me right now, wherever you are, because I'm sitting here in my childhood home in Memphis, Tennessee, on South Parkway East, and I need you to feel every single word of what I'm about to tell you like it's happening to you. Drop your city in the comments right now. Memphis, Atlanta, Detroit, Chicago, New Orleans, Baltimore, wherever the good Lord's got you planted tonight. And tell me what you're doing while you're watching this. Are you cooking dinner? Putting the kids to bed? Sitting in your car before you go inside? I want to know who's here with me because this story is about to shake you to your core. My name is Michael Elijah Freeman, and 37 days ago, we buried my mama, Dorothy Mae Freeman, at Elmwood Cemetery right there next to my daddy, James, aka Jimmy Freeman, who we'd laid to rest 8 years before. Mama was 73 years old when she passed. Daddy had been 71, and both of them died the same way they'd lived, quietly, humbly, asking for nothing from nobody. We thought they died broke. No life insurance, no savings account, no property in their names, just a rented house on South Parkway that Mama had been paying for 42 years, a 1987 Buick LeSabre with rust eating through the doors and enough debt for medical bills to make me sick just thinking about it. When Mama passed, it was me and my sister Keisha who had to scrape together money for the funeral. We put it on credit cards, asked cousins to chip in, had a fish fry fundraiser at Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church where Mama sang in the choir for 51 years. We barely made it. The funeral was small but beautiful. About 75 people came, church folks, neighbors, Mama's friends from the Kroger where she'd worked as a cashier for 30 years. People brought casseroles and potato salad and their memories of Dorothy Mae, the woman who always had a kind word, always helped when she could, always made you feel like you mattered, even when the world said you didn't. Pastor Williams preached about how the meek shall inherit the earth and how Mama and Daddy were the kind of people Jesus was talking about, humble servants who never sought glory, never complained, never acted like they were owed anything. We cried through the whole service, not just because we missed her, but because it felt so unfair that 2 people who worked so hard, who gave so much, who lived so right, ended up with nothing to show for it. After the repast, after the last cousin left with their Tupperware containers and promises to stay in touch, Keisha and I sat in Mama's living room, surrounded by a lifetime of stuff we'd have to sort through. "We gotta do this," Keisha said, looking around at the decades of accumulated memories. I nodded, too tired to speak. We started the next day. Going through Mama's house was like walking through our whole childhood in reverse. Every room held 1,000 memories. The kitchen where Mama made her famous peach cobbler, the living room where we watched The Cosby Show in a different world every Thursday night, the back bedroom where Daddy used to sit in his chair reading the commercial appeal newspaper, circling things with a pencil for reasons we never understood. Daddy had passed 8 years ago, sudden and quiet. Heart attack while he was sleeping. We'd done this same dance then, going through his things, trying to make sense of a life lived small and humble. Back then, we'd found nothing. No secret bank accounts, no hidden treasures, just a man who worked construction jobs and cleaned office buildings at night and never seemed to have 2 nickels to rub together. We'd buried him at Elmwood Cemetery with what little money Mama had saved, and life went on. Now Mama was gone too, and here we were again, sorting through the evidence of poverty. On the 3rd day, Keisha said she couldn't take any more. She had to get back to her kids in Atlanta. She'd taken off all the time she could from her job at the hospital. She said, "You keep going. Whatever you find that's worth something, we'll split it. Whatever's junk, just throw it away. I trust you.
So I was alone in that house, surrounded by ghosts and memories and the overwhelming sadness of realizing your parents really did die with nothing. The attic was the last place I wanted to go. It was hot up there, even in October, stuffy and close and full of things that hadn't been touched in years. But I knew if there was anything left to find, it would be up there. I climbed down the rickety pull-down stairs with a flashlight and a garbage bag, ready to just throw everything away. The attic was packed with boxes, Christmas decorations we hadn't used in decades, old clothes and garbage bags, stacks of National Geographic magazines from the 1970s, broken furniture Daddy had always meant to fix. I started sorting methodically, making piles, trash, donate, keep. Most of it was trash. I was about to give up, about to climb back down and call it a day, when I knocked over a box in the corner and old shoes spilled out across the wooden floor. Work boots, church shoes, sneakers so old they were falling apart. I started putting them back in the box when I noticed a shoebox underneath, wrapped in a Kroger bag and taped shut. Something about it made me pause. The tape was old, yellowed with age, and deliberate, like someone had sealed it carefully, with purpose. I peeled the tape off slowly. Inside the shoebox were papers, old receipts, photographs, a few letters tied with string, and under all of it, at the very bottom, a cassette tape in a cracked plastic case. I picked it up, held it to the light streaming through the attic vent. The label was faded, but I could make out my daddy's handwriting, that shaky scrawl he had in his later years when his hand started to shake from working construction for 40 years. 5 words written in blue ink. Play only if I die. My hand started trembling. I hadn't seen a cassette tape in years, hadn't even thought about them since the 90s. But I knew Mama still had her old boombox in the bedroom, the one she used to play her gospel tapes on Sunday mornings. I climbed down from the attic, clutching that cassette tape like it was made of gold, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Found Mama's boombox on her dresser, right where it had always been, covered in dust, a Shirley Caesar tape still inside.
I popped out Shirley Caesar, slid in Daddy's tape with shaking hands and pressed play. Static hissed through the speakers, then silence. Then my daddy's voice filled Mama's bedroom, strong and clear and alive in a way that made tears spring to my eyes instantly. Michael, Keisha, if you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. And it means your mama's gone too, because I told her to destroy this tape if she went first. But if you found it, it means it's time. I sat down hard on Mama's bed, hand over my mouth. Time for what, Daddy? I whispered to the empty room. His voice continued, and I could hear him smiling. That same smile he used to have when he was about to tell us something we weren't expecting. Time you knew the truth about who I really was. The tape crackled with static and I held my breath. You thought I was poor. I know you did. Hell, the whole neighborhood thought so. The whole city thought so. And I let 'em think it. But son, daughter, I need you to understand something. A pause. The sound of him taking a deep breath. I was never poor. Not for one single day of my adult life. I stopped breathing. I let the world think I was broke. Let them see me in my work boots and my old truck and my tired face. Let them think Jimmy Freeman was just another black man ground down by the system, barely making it, nothing to show for a life of hard work. Another pause. Longer this time. But the truth is, I own half of Memphis. The boombox kept playing, but I couldn't hear anything over the roaring in my ears. What did he just say? I rewound the tape, played it again. The truth is, I own half of Memphis. Half of Memphis. My daddy, Jimmy Freeman, The man who wore the same 3 shirts in rotation, who drove a truck held together with duct tape, who we buried with money from a fish fry, owned half of Memphis? I must have rewound that tape 10 times, listening to those words over and over, trying to make them make sense. They didn't. Nothing made sense. I sat there on Mama's bed in the growing darkness, listening to my dead father's voice tell me everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. I started in 1967, Daddy's voice continued. I was 21 years old, fresh back from Vietnam, and I had money saved up from my service. Not a lot, but enough. Memphis was changing then. White folks were running to the suburbs, scared of integration, scared of us. Properties downtown were going for nothing. I heard papers rustling in the background of the recording. I started on Beale Street. You remember Beale Street? How Mama used to take you down there for the music festival? How we'd walk past all them clubs and restaurants and you'd ask why we never went inside? Never ate at the restaurants? Never shopped in the stores? I always thought it was because we couldn't afford it. Well, baby boy, I couldn't take you inside because I owned the buildings. And I couldn't let people know that. Couldn't let anyone connect Jimmy Freeman, the night janitor, to the man collecting rent from half of Beale Street. My vision was blurring with tears. I bought my first property in 1967, a little building at 147 Beale. Run down, nobody wanted it. Paid $3,500 cash, fixed it up myself at night after my janitorial shifts. Rented it to a man who wanted to open a shoe repair shop. The tape crackled with static, but Daddy's voice pushed through. That rent money, I didn't spend a dime of it. Saved every penny. Bought another property in 68, then another in 69, then 3 more in 70. By 1975, I owned 12 buildings on Beale Street. By 1985, I owned 23 buildings. By 1995, when you graduated high school, Michael, I owned 47 properties in downtown Memphis. 47 properties? I was crying now, full on sobbing, alone in my mama's bedroom. Clubs, restaurants, apartments, storefronts, parking lots, all of it mine. But nobody knew. I kept every property in a trust, used a management company to collect rent, never put my name on anything public, drove my old truck, wore my old clothes, kept working my night shifts cleaning toilets at the FedEx offices downtown. Why? I said out loud to the empty room. Why, Daddy? As if he could hear me from beyond the grave, Daddy answered. I stayed quiet because I wanted you safe. Money makes enemies, son. Money makes people jealous. Money makes people think they got a right to what's yours. I grew up watching successful black folks get torn down. By the law, by jealous neighbors, by the system. I wasn't going to let that happen to my family. I heard Mama's voice in the background of the tape, soft and far away, saying something I couldn't make out. Daddy laughed. Your mama wants me to tell you that she didn't know either. Not at first. Not for the first 10 years. She thought we were poor too. Thought I was working myself to death for pennies. Even Mama didn't know. I told her in 1977, after you were born, Michael. Sat her down right here in this bedroom and played her a tape just like this one. She was so mad she didn't speak to me for a week. I could hear the smile in his voice. But then she understood. Understood I was building something bigger than us. Building protection. Building security. Building a legacy that couldn't be taken away because nobody knew it existed. The tape went quiet for a moment. Then Daddy's voice came back. Softer now. Tired sounding. I'm recording this in 2016. I'm 70 years old and my hands shake and my back hurts and I know I don't have many years left. Your mama's in the living room watching her stories. You and Keisha are grown, living your own lives. And I'm sitting here thinking about everything I built and everything I hid and wondering if I did right. A long pause. I think I did. I kept you safe, kept Mama safe. Nobody ever came after us. Nobody ever tried to rob us or hurt us or take what was ours because nobody knew what was ours. We lived small so you could dream big. We lived poor so you could end up rich. I heard him shifting papers again. Now, I'm going to tell you what to do next. In the bottom drawer of Mama's dresser, the one she keeps her church programs in, you'll find a manila envelope. Don't open it yet. Just listen first. I jumped up from the bed and yanked open Mama's bottom dresser drawer, pulled out stacks of church programs, funeral cards, old bulletins. And there at the very bottom was a manila envelope, thick and sealed, with my name and Keisha's name written on the front in Daddy's handwriting. I grabbed it with shaking hands and went back to the bed, clutching it to my chest while Daddy's voice kept talking. That envelope contains every deed to every property I own. 47 properties on Bill Street and downtown Memphis. Also in there, you'll find the contact information for the trust, for the management company, for the lawyers who've been handling everything for 30 years. They know to expect you. They've been paid to help you with the transition. My daddy had lawyers, plural. The properties are worth about $42 million now, maybe more, depending on what the market's doing. They generate about $3.2 million a year in rent. All of it's been going into the trust, building and building for decades. $42 million. $3.2 million a year. I couldn't breathe. The man we buried with money from a fish fry had $42 million. The man who couldn't afford his own funeral owned half of Bill Street. I sat there frozen, gripping that manila envelope while Daddy's voice kept pouring out of that old boombox like water breaking through a dam. Now I know what you're thinking, Daddy said, and I could hear that knowing tone he used to use when he caught us in a lie. You're thinking, why, Daddy? Why didn't you spend it? Why didn't you help us when we needed help? Why'd you let Mama work at Kroger for 30 years when she didn't have to? That's exactly what I was thinking. Michael, Keisha, I need you to understand something about being Black in America, especially being Black in Memphis in the 60s, 70s, 80s. They weren't ready for us to have nothing. And when we did manage to get something, they found ways to take it back. I heard him take a sip of something, probably his coffee, black with 2 sugars, the way he always took it. I watched my own father lose everything he had. Your granddaddy, Michael? Yes, son, you're named after him. He owned a grocery store in Orange Mound back in the 50s. Did real well. Too well. White folks didn't like seeing a Black man prosper, so they found reasons. Building code violations that didn't exist, health inspections that failed him for nothing. Eventually, they drove him out of business, took his store, and he spent the rest of his life working for other people in the same neighborhood where he used to be the boss. I'd never heard this story. Never knew Granddaddy Michael had owned anything. That broke him, Daddy continued, voice heavy with old pain. Broke his spirit. I watched him die angry, bitter, feeling like a failure. And I promised myself that would never be me. I would never let them see me winning so they could tear me down. I would win in the shadows, build in secret, stack my paper where nobody could touch it. The tape crackled, and I pressed my ear closer to the speaker. So when I got back from Vietnam in '66 with that money burning a hole in my pocket, I had a choice. I could spend it on a nice car, nice clothes, let everybody see Jimmy Freeman doing good. Or I could hide it, invest it, build something they couldn't see and couldn't take. I chose to hide. Another pause, the sound of papers shuffling. Your mama understood eventually. She didn't like it at first. Lord knows we had some fights about it. She wanted a bigger house, wanted to quit working at Kroger for her long. She wanted to take vacations like other folks. But I told her, baby, we're playing the long game. We're building something for Michael and Keisha that nobody can touch. But we got to stay invisible to do it. I remember those arguments now, though I never understood what they were arguing about back then. I'd hear Mama's voice raised, hear Daddy's low and steady, and then silence. Always silence after. And then the next morning they'd be fine, Mama making breakfast, Daddy reading his paper like nothing ever happened. Every property I bought under the trust. Every check I cashed through the management company. Every tax bill, every repair, every tenant issue, all of it handled by people who weren't me. Far as the world knew, Jimmy Freeman was just a janitor who cleaned the FedEx building from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. My daddy, the janitor. That's what everyone called him. Mr. Jimmy who pushed the big trash cans down Bill Street on Wednesday mornings. Mr. Jimmy who was always polite, always humble, always grateful for any work anybody would give him. Mr. Jimmy who the bartenders and restaurant owners would sometimes give leftover food to at the end of the night, feeling charitable toward the poor working man. The whole time, he owned the buildings they worked in. I want you to know I loved being invisible, Daddy said, and I could hear the truth in his voice. It gave me freedom. I could walk anywhere, hear anything. Nobody watched what they said around the janitor. Nobody hid their true face from Jimmy Freeman, the poor man. I saw who people really were when they thought nobody important was watching. He laughed then, a sound that made my heart crack open. I saw which business owners treated their employees right and which ones didn't. I saw who paid their rent on time and who tried to skip out. I saw who was honest and who was crooked, and I made decisions based on that. The good ones, I kept their rent low, gave them breaks when they needed it, helped them succeed. The bad ones, I raised their rent every year until they couldn't afford it anymore and somebody better could move in. My daddy was playing chess while everybody else was thinking he was playing checkers. I watched Bill Street almost die in the 70s and 80s. Watched businesses close, buildings fall apart, tourists stop coming. The city wanted to tear it all down, turn it into parking lots or office buildings, but I wouldn't sell, not one property. I held on when other landlords gave up and walked away. And when Bill Street came back in the 90s, when the tourists started coming again, when the music brought light back to those streets, I was still there, owning the same buildings I'd bought for pennies 30 years earlier. I could hear the pride in his voice, not arrogant pride, the quiet pride of a man who'd played the long game and won. Now, those buildings that cost me $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in the 60s are worth millions now, and they're all yours, mine, and Keisha's. I looked down at the envelope in my hands like it might disappear if I took my eyes off of it. But I need you to promise me something, Daddy said, voice turning serious. Don't sell it. Not all of it anyway. Keep Bill Street in the family. Keep it Black-owned. There's developers out there right now, white folks, corporations, people who don't care about the history or the culture, who want to buy up every inch of Bill Street and turn it into some sanitized version of itself. Don't let them. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. I won't, Daddy. I promise. Keep the rents fair. Help the small businesses. Support the musicians and the artists and the people trying to make something of themselves. That's what Beale Street is supposed to be about. Not about squeezing every dollar out of tourists. About keeping Black culture alive and thriving. The tape went quiet for so long I thought it had ended. Then Daddy's voice came back one more time. Softer now, almost a whisper. I loved you both more than anything in this world. You and Keisha and your mama. Everything I did to keep you safe and give you a future. I know you thought we were poor. I know you went without things you wanted. I know there were times you were embarrassed by me, by our house, by our old car. My throat closed up. There had been times Times I'd been embarrassed to bring friends home. Times I'd been ashamed of Daddy's janitor uniform. Times I'd wished we were like other families. But I hope one day you'll understand. I wasn't poor. I was strategic. I wasn't struggling. I was building. And every night I came home smelling like bleach and floor wax. I was coming home from managing an empire. The tape clicked off with a final burst of static. I sat there in the dark room, tears streaming down my face, the manila envelope pressed against my chest. The silence was deafening. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. Time didn't mean anything anymore. Finally, with shaking hands, I opened the envelope. Inside were dozens of documents, neatly organized with paper clips and labeled tabs in Daddy's meticulous handwriting. Property deeds, all of them with the same names listed as owners. The Freeman Family Trust, established 1967. 147 Beale Street, purchased 1967 for $3,500. Current estimated value, $850,000. 162 Beale Street, purchased 1968 for $4,200. Current value, $920,000. 189 Beale Street, purchased 1969 for $3,800. Current value, $1.1 million. On and on and on. 47 properties total, every single one documented with purchase price, current value, rental income, tenant information. There was a letter from a law firm, Mitchell, Patterson, and Associates, the lawyers who'd been managing the trust since 1967. There was contact information for Memphis Property Management Group, the company that collected rent and handled maintenance. There was a ledger showing every single rent payment collected over the last 57 years, every expense paid, every tax filed, everything organized, everything documented, everything legal and proper and impossible to dispute. At the very bottom of the envelope was a photograph I'd never seen before. Daddy in 1967, standing in front of 147 Beale Street with a young black man in a suit. Must have been his lawyer. Daddy looked so young, so proud, so full of dreams. He was holding a key and smiling bigger than I'd ever seen him smile in my whole life. On the back of the photo and Mama's handwriting, the first one, the one that started everything, May 3rd, 1967. I'm so proud of you, Jimmy. I pressed the photo to my lips and sobbed. My daddy. My invisible daddy. My janitor daddy who owned half of Memphis. I called Keisha. It was almost midnight, but I didn't care. She answered on the third ring, voice groggy. Michael, what's wrong? I said, Daddy wasn't poor, Keisha. What? Daddy wasn't poor, Keisha. He owned half of Memphis. He left us $42 million. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, what are you talking about? I told her everything. About the cassette tape, about the properties, about the trust, about Daddy's secret empire that he built in the shadows for 57 years. She didn't believe me at first. Thought I'd lost my mind in my grief. So I took pictures of every document, every deed, every letter, and texted them to her while we were on the phone. I heard her gasp as the pictures came through. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God, Michael. I said, he didn't for us. He lived poor so we could end up rich. He worked as a janitor so nobody would know. He stayed invisible so we'd be safe. Keisha started crying. I could hear her husband in the background asking what was wrong. I gotta call you back, she said. I need a minute. She hung up. I sat there in Mama's bedroom surrounded by the evidence of a secret life, and I finally understood. Every time we asked Daddy why we couldn't afford something, and he said, maybe next time.
Every time Mama worked a double shift at Kroger and came home exhausted, every time they said no to things we wanted, things we thought other families had, every time they chose to live small, live humble, live invisible, they were protecting us. They were building something that nobody could take away. They were ensuring that one day we'd have everything they never showed the world they had. I spent the rest of that night going through every document, reading every deed, studying every property, learning about the empire my daddy built while the world thought he was just another black man struggling to survive. The buildings were all over downtown Memphis and Beale Street, clubs where B.B. King used to play, restaurants serving soul food to tourists, apartments housing families and students, storefronts where black entrepreneurs ran barbershops and clothing stores and record shops. All of it Daddy's. All of it ours now. The trust had been accumulating wealth for decades. The $3.2 million in annual rent had been reinvesting, growing, compounding. The total value of the trust was actually closer to $63 million when you included all the accumulated cash reserves and investments. $63 million. From a man who died with $47 in his checking account. From a woman who worked at Kroger until 3 weeks before she died. From parents who let us think we were poor so we'd stay humble, stay grounded, stay safe. I understood it now, finally. Understood the gift they'd given us. Not just the money, not just the properties. The gift of invisibility. The gift of humility. The gift of knowing what it felt like to struggle so we'd never take for granted what we had. The gift of watching them work hard so we'd understand the value of work. The gift of thinking we had nothing so we'd appreciate everything. When the sun came up the next morning, I was still sitting on Mama's bed, surrounded by documents and deeds and the evidence of a love so deep it looked like poverty to the untrained eye. I called the lawyers first thing Monday morning. Mitchell, Patterson, and Associates had offices downtown in one of those old buildings on Madison Avenue. When I told the receptionist I was James Freeman's son, she put me straight through to the senior partner. "Mr. Freeman," said a voice that I later learned belonged to Thomas Mitchell III, "I'm so sorry for your loss. Both of your losses. Your father was an extraordinary man." "You knew him?" "I never met him personally. My grandfather handled his account originally, then my father, now me. 3 generations of Mitchells protecting 3 generations of Freemans. Your father was very clear about how he wanted things handled."
We set up a meeting for that afternoon. The law office was old Memphis money, wood paneling, leather chairs, paintings of founding partners dating back to 1891. Thomas Mitchell III was a white man in his 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, and a warm handshake that surprised me. "Your father was brilliant," he said as we sat down in his office. "Truly brilliant. What he built over 5 decades with no formal education, no connections, no advantage except his own vision and discipline. Remarkable." He pulled out a file that must have been 6 inches thick. Every property purchase was strategic. He never overpaid, never over-leveraged, never took on debt he couldn't handle, and he never, ever told anyone who he really was. Thomas smiled. "My grandfather said Jimmy Freeman was the smartest client he ever had." "Why did he trust your family?" I asked. "No offense, but why would a black man in 1967 Memphis trust a white law firm?" Thomas nodded like he'd been expecting the question. "Because my grandfather had defended 3 black property owners who were being railroaded by the city in 1966. He won all 3 cases, lost clients over it, other white families who thought he was a traitor, but he believed in justice over profit. Your father heard about it, showed up at his office one day with $3,500 cash and a deed to a building on Beale Street,
and said, "I need someone who'll keep a secret and keep me safe." They shook hands that day, and neither one ever broke their word. I felt tears coming again. Seemed like that's all I did lately, cry over things I was just now learning. "The trust is yours and your sister's now," Thomas continued. "Equal shares. The properties generate about $3.2 million annually in rental income. There's currently $18.3 million in cash reserves and investments. And the properties themselves are conservatively valued at $44.7 million, though I suspect in today's market they're worth closer to $60 million. He slid a document across the desk. "This is the full accounting. Every penny your father ever made, every expense ever paid, every tax return ever filed. All legal, all documented, all clean." I looked at the numbers and felt dizzy. What do I do now? "Whatever you want," Thomas said simply. "You can sell everything and walk away rich. You can keep it and manage it. You can continue operating exactly as your father did, invisibly, safely, quietly building wealth. It's your choice now." I thought about Daddy's voice on that tape. "Don't sell it. Keep Bill Street in the family. Keep it Black-owned." I want to keep it, all of it. I want to do what Daddy did, protect Bill Street, keep it authentic, help the community. Thomas smiled. "Your father said you'd say that. He knew you, son, knew your heart." Over the next month, Keisha flew in from Atlanta and we met with the lawyers, the property managers, the accountants. We learned how the empire worked. We met the tenants. We walked Bill Street together, looking at all the buildings Daddy owned, seeing them with new eyes. The club where we'd heard blues music as kids? Daddy's building. The restaurant where Mama sometimes took us for birthdays? Daddy owned it. The apartments above the storefronts where families lived? All Daddy's. The parking lot where tourists left their cars? Daddy's land. Everywhere we looked, we saw his invisible fingerprints. Word started spreading. Slowly at first, then faster. The Freeman kids inherited all that property. Jimmy the janitor owned half of Bill Street? Did you know? Did you hear? People's attitudes changed overnight. Folks who used to look past us suddenly wanted to talk to us. Business owners who Daddy used to sweep floors for suddenly remembered they were always close with Jimmy. Church members who contributed to Mama's funeral fund suddenly wanted to know if we needed investment advice. It was sickening and hilarious at the same time, but the people that mattered, the people who genuinely loved Mama and Daddy for who they were, not what they had, those people stayed the same. Pastor Williams pulled me aside after church one Sunday. "Your daddy was the smartest man I ever knew," he said quietly. He used to slip me envelopes sometimes, cash for families who were struggling. Never wanted credit, never wanted his name attached. Just said, "Pastor, help somebody who needs it." I must have given away $50,000 of his money over the years, and he never told a soul. Mrs. Jefferson, Mama's best friend from the Kroger, told me Daddy had paid for her daughter's college tuition anonymously. She said she thought it was a scholarship. She found out last week it was your daddy the whole time. Paid all 4 years. My baby got her degree because of Jimmy Freeman. Story after story came out. People Daddy had helped without them knowing it was him. Medical bills he had paid, rent he had covered, cars he had bought. Always anonymous, always invisible, always through some third party so nobody knew. My daddy was a secret superhero, and he hid it so well that even his own kids didn't know until he was gone. Keisha and I made a decision. We'd keep the empire exactly as Daddy ran it, quiet, strategic, focused on helping people more than making money. We kept the rents affordable. We gave breaks to tenants who were struggling. We invested in renovations and improvements. We made sure Bill Street stayed authentic, stayed Black-owned, stayed true to its roots. And we used the money to do what Daddy had done, help people anonymously. We set up a scholarship fund for South Memphis students. We paid off medical debt for church families. We bought instruments for the high school band. We funded the youth center in Orange Mound. All of it done quietly. All of it done in Mama and Daddy's names. All of it done the way they taught us. Help people without needing credit for it. 3 months after I found that cassette tape, I went back to Daddy's grave at Elmwood Cemetery. Stood there looking at the simple headstone we'd been able to afford. James Jimmy Freeman, 1946, 2016. Beloved husband and father. We know now, Daddy, I said out loud, not caring who heard me. We know what you really were. We know what you built. We know why you did it. The wind blew through the cemetery trees. And we promised to protect it, to keep Bill Street in the family, to help people the way you did, to stay humble even though we don't have to anymore. I laid my hand on the headstone, felt the sun-warmed granite under my palm. You weren't just a janitor, Daddy. You were a king. An invisible king who built an empire in the shadows, and now we're going to make sure everybody knows that poor Black folks built this city and own pieces of it that can never be taken away. I visit that grave once a week now. Sometimes I bring Keisha's kids so they can know their grandfather. Tell them stories about the man who pushed a mop bucket down Beale Street while secretly owning the buildings on both sides. The man who lived in a rented house so nobody would know he could buy the whole block.
The man who drove a rusted-out truck while sitting on $60 million. The man who let the world think he was nothing so his children could inherit everything. Last week, the city of Memphis tried to buy 3 of our Beale Street properties, offered us $10 million, said they wanted to develop them into something more modern. I looked at their offer, thought about Daddy's voice on that tape, and wrote back one word: no. Because some things aren't for sale. Some legacies aren't for trade. Some empires are meant to stay in the family, hidden or not. Beale Street is ours. It was Daddy's, and now it's ours, and is going to stay ours for generations. Let them think we're just Jimmy the janitor's kids. Let them underestimate us. Let them think we got lucky. We know the truth. We come from brilliance. We come from strategy. We come from a man who played chess while the world thought he was sweeping floors. And we're going to honor that by doing exactly what he did: building, protecting, and helping, all while staying humble enough that people never see us coming. Now let me talk to you. Whoever you are watching this. Maybe you're in Memphis like me. Maybe you're in some other city where people judge you by what you drive, what you wear, where you live. Maybe you've been looked down on, dismissed, treated like you don't matter because you don't look successful by the world's definition. Maybe people see you working that regular job, driving that regular car, living that regular life, and they think they know your whole story. Here's what I need you to understand. They don't know. They never know. Your worth isn't determined by what people can see. Your success isn't measured by how much you show off. Your legacy isn't built by impressing people who don't matter. My daddy taught me that the most powerful people in any room are often the ones nobody's paying attention to. The janitor, who's actually the landlord. The cashier, who owns the building. The quiet person in the corner who could buy everything you see but chooses not to flex. There's power in being underestimated. There's strategy in staying humble. There's wisdom in letting people think you're less than you are while you're quietly building something they can't touch. I'm not saying everyone needs to live a double life like Daddy did. Times are different now. The risks he faced as a Black man in the 1960s Memphis aren't exactly the same as what we face today. But the principle still stands. Do your work quietly. Build your empire in the shadows. Protect your peace by not letting everyone into your business. Help people without needing credit. Stack your blessings without needing applause. And never, ever let people's opinions of you determine how you see yourself. They thought my daddy was poor. They were wrong. They thought he was just a janitor. They were wrong. They thought he'd die with nothing.
They were so wrong, it would be funny if it wasn't so sad. The truth is, Daddy died rich in every way that matters. Rich in love, rich in legacy, rich in the respect of the people who really knew him, and yeah, rich in actual money too, but that was almost beside the point. He taught me that you can be invisible and powerful at the same time, that you can wear work boots and own the ground you walk on, that you can let people think you're struggling while you're actually thriving, not because you're dishonest, but because you're strategic, not because you're ashamed, but because you're protecting what's yours until the time is right to reveal it. If you're out there right now, working a job people look down on, cleaning buildings, serving food, stocking shelves, whatever it is, hear me clearly. That job doesn't define you. What you're building in private, what you're saving, what you're planning, what you're dreaming, that's what defines you. My daddy cleaned toilets while owning 47 buildings. Your current circumstances don't determine your final destination. And if you're out there thinking you need to show off to prove you made it, to buy the flashy car or the expensive clothes or post everything on social media so people know you're doing well, ask yourself why. Are you building for yourself and your family, or are you performing for people who don't actually care about you? My daddy could have lived in a mansion, could have driven a Mercedes, could have flexed on everybody who'd ever looked down on him. He chose not to. He chose strategy over ego. He chose safety over status. He chose legacy over likes. And because of that choice, his grandchildren will inherit wealth that can never be taken away. That's power. Real, lasting, generational power. So wherever you are right now, whatever you're building, whatever you're working toward, keep it quiet, keep it protected, keep it sacred. Not everyone deserves to know your plans. Not everyone deserves access to your dreams. Not everyone has earned the right to witness your come up. Do your work, build your empire, stack your paper, help your people, and let them figure out who you really are when it's too late for them to stop you. Before I go, I want to say thank you to Mama and Daddy. I know you can't hear me, but I'm saying it anyway. Thank you for every sacrifice. Thank you for every time you said no to us because you were saying yes to our future. Thank you for loving us enough to live small so we could dream big. Thank you for the cassette tape. Thank you for the trust. Thank you for the buildings. Thank you for the lesson. You taught us that wealth isn't just about money. It's about wisdom. It's about strategy. It's about knowing when to be seen and when to stay invisible. I promise we won't let you down. We're going to protect Beale Street. We're going to help our community. We're going to use what you built to lift people up the way you always did, quietly and without fanfare. And we're going to make sure your story, the real story, not the one people thought they knew, lives forever. To everyone watching, thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me share my family story with you. If this resonated with you, hit that like button. Let me know you heard me. Subscribe if you want to be part of this community we're building, a community of people who understand that real power doesn't need to be loud, real wealth doesn't need to be flashy, and real success doesn't need anyone's validation. Drop a comment telling me where you're from and what this story made you think about. Tell me about a time someone underestimated you. Tell me about someone in your life who was more than they seemed. Tell me your story. Because that's what we do here. We share our truths. We honor our people. We remember that we're all building something bigger than ourselves. Hit that share button and send this to someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's grinding in silence. Someone who's being underestimated. Someone who's building an empire nobody can see yet. Thank you for being here. Thank you for hearing my daddy's story. Thank you for understanding that sometimes the poorest looking people in the room are the richest ones there. From my heart to yours, from my family to your family, from Beale Street to wherever you are, keep building, keep grinding, keep believing. Your cassette tape moment is coming. And when it does, the whole world is going to be shocked, but you'll just smile because you knew all along. You knew all along.